Welcome to the birth story of my third son, Denam. This happened a year ago. He's about to be 1. I absolutely cannot believe this has been the fastest year of my life. Each kid that you have, I feel like it just goes faster and faster. I'm gonna share my birth story back then, but I had a third kid and it's been crazy ever since. But I love birth stories. I love sharing them. I'll have my other 2 birth stories on YouTube. I'm sure you guys already know that. But I'm excited to share it. It was so fast too. I filmed like 1 clip in labor, and that was it. That was all I got. So here we are. I'm just gonna do a sit down birth story video. If you are not interested, obviously I feel like you are if you clicked on it. Here's the story of Denam Matthew. And he was born on his due date, April 22nd. He's my little Earth Day baby. So let's rewind. I was very, very pregnant, and he was my biggest baby. Let's just start there. He was my biggest baby, okay? He was 9 pounds, 6 ounces, but he was my easiest push, my quickest labor, and it was just wild. So birth plan going into it, I just wanted to have a healthy baby, okay? I wanted to, if I was gonna get an epidural, I wanted it to be as late as possible into labor. I wanted to labor at home as long as possible. I was praying that it was not gonna be in the middle of the night, and I was praying that I wouldn't have back labor, okay? And of course, guess what? All that happened. All of that happened. So let's rewind. Leading up to my 40 weeks, I had my 40-week appointment the day before my due date, which was April 21st. Leading up, I was having intense Braxton Hicks, like to the point where I was breathing through them. And there had been times where I was like, is this it? And you'd think by the 3rd time I would know what real labor feels like, but no, each time I'm like, these feel really intense. I'm not really sure if this is real contractions, but I know now, every time I have real contractions, I cannot get comfortable, okay? So I was having pretty intense Braxton Hicks for weeks leading up to labor, like to the point where I had to like breathe, okay? So leading up, my midwife was like, if I see you at your 40-week appointment, I say we do a sweep if you want to do that. And I said, heck yeah, let's do it. So I had a sweep with my first Grayson, and it didn't hurt at all. And I was 1 centimeter, I think. And I didn't have a sweep with my second, Leo, because he went into labor on his own. And then I had a sweep. So I went to my 40-week appointment the day before my due date, and she's like, let's do this. Okay, that was the most intense, insane membrane sweep I've ever felt in my life. I was just like, it hurt. It hurt, okay? So she swept, and she was like, if I'm gonna sweep, I'm gonna sweep. I'm putting you into labor, honey. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'm ready. So she swept me. It hurt really bad. I came home. I started driving home. I'm like hysterical on the ride home because I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to have a baby. Like, I'm gonna have a baby. But like, I was definitely crampy. I like bled a little bit, and I'm like, you know what? Nothing was happening afterwards when I got home. Like, nothing was happening. So I'm doing all of it. I'm doing the mile circuit. I am going for walks around the block. I am curb walking my little booty out. Okay, I'm doing stair lunges. I'm doing the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, later, I think it was like 4 p.m. I started to have more intense Braxton Hicks, but I still wasn't like in labor, but I'm like, I'm gonna be in labor tonight. I told Matthew. He's like, let's go get sushi. And I'm like, okay. So we go to sushi. We go to sushi. I'm like contracting in sushi, but like, again, I wasn't like full blown because I had to like breathe and stop eating, but I wasn't uncomfortable. So I told Matthew, like, we did this with Leo too. We planned it to where I would be in labor on Saturdays so that he could have an off day from the gym. Okay. Like, we're gonna do the same thing. What happened with Leo was we said, the way he came in, we're gonna do that again to get him out, and it worked. So I said, okay, we went to sushi. It was a wonderful final meal. And we came home. I took the kids on a walk. I was so out of breath. I was so large and in charge, and put the kids to bed. We had some dessert, so on and so forth. So I said, all right, let's get this over with. Okay, it was not fun. It was not fun. I was just uncomfortable, and I'm like, get it over with. Okay, so we did that, and we're going to bed. It's 11:30. I'm not kidding you. I closed my eyes. 5 minutes later, full-blown labor, full-blown contractions. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. Okay, it started in the middle of the night. I had been up since 6 o'clock. I was so tired. I did not take a nap that day. And I'm like, I'm in labor. This is my worst nightmare. I did not want to be in labor in the middle of the night, but here we were. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let Matthew sleep. I'm going to labor as long as possible. And when stuff picks up, we'll go to the hospital. I lay down and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to rest in between contractions. I feel a gush and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my bloody show. I get up, I am like, this is gonna be TMI, okay? It's a birth story. I am gushing blood, gushing. And I walk, like clots are coming out of me and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this has never happened before. Anytime I've had a bloody show, it's been like, you know, a little bit of pink with the mucus. No, I was clotting. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what else, what is going on? So I go to the bathroom again, clots are coming out and I'm freaking out because I'm like, this is not normal. This is like a bloody show. This is not the bloody show. This is a bloody show. So I call the hospital and I'm like, hey, I'm definitely in labor. I had my bloody show, but it's like a bloody show, you know, like, oh, someone was coming. Okay. So I'm like, what? Like, you know, should I be worried? They asked me like how much it looked like. They're like, is it more than a quarter? And I'm like, it's like 6 quarters at least. Okay. So they're like, yeah, you should come in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wanted to labor at home as long as possible, but I'm like in labor. So I'm like, great. Now I have to wake up Matthew. And I'm like, honey, I'm sorry, I wanted to let you sleep, but like, they told me to come in because I'm bleeding so much. So I call my mother-in-law, she comes over, it takes her like 25 minutes to drive over. So I'm laboring, Matt's like finally packing his hospital bag. He didn't pack anything. Okay, that's my husband. So he's packing, taking his sweet ass time. I'm laboring, he's like pushing on my back. And guess what I have too? Back labor. So I'm like, this is starting off so great. And so I'm like, whatever, stay positive, like it's fine. Oh, by the way, when I was getting my sweep, I was 3 centimeters dilated already. So I'm pretty sure I was like 60% or 50% effaced. 3 centimeters, 50% effaced, she did this week. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be at least like 4 centimeters when I get to the hospital. So finally, I'm pretty sure we left after like an hour and a half because Matt's taking his sweetest ass time. His mom was like, Matthew, like, pick it up, man. I wasn't too worried. I was mostly just worried about the blood. So anyway, finally we get over there. I am like breathing in the car. I'm like, oh my God, hurry up. Because there's nothing worse than contracting in the car. You know, like you just can't move. You have your seatbelt on. It's not fun. I do not like the car ride to the hospital. So we finally get there. I'm like, I check in. They check me and they're like, you know what? I think you're fine with the blood. It was just probably a lot of blood, like a bloody show, maybe a mixture of the SEX and the mixture of the membrane sweep, but you're fine. We're just going to check you in because you're 4 centimeters. So I'm like, okay. And you're 85% effaced or something like that. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's fine. Like, let's just labor here. What time is it?
I think it's like 1 a.m. 2 a.m. Sorry.
It's 2 a.m. I'm getting admitted. Fucking tired.
You woke up like at 12:30. You're like, bam.
They were more consistent. Could not sleep at all because they were. So I'm gonna have one right now. Hold on. Glad we did because everything went really fast after that. Like I feel like I don't even know if I remember everything because you just kind of black out in the middle of it. But when we were still in like the triage area, I was doing my hypnobirthing. I had the Freya app. I was holding my comb and it wasn't that bad at this point. But then it started picking up and I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're like, okay, let's get you to a room. So I get to a room and when I get to the room, everything hit the fan. Like, I don't even know what time it was. I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning at this point. What was it? 11, 12, 12, 1, 2. Yeah, it must have been like 2:30 or 3. So I had been laboring since 11:30. It had been a couple hours. And I was like in active labor at this point. I was like, the comb is not working and I have intense back labor. And there was so much pressure down because he was so big, but I'm doing all the labor stuff. I am moving in different movements. I knew I was like at the point where the baby was, turning and going into the mid pelvis. So I'm doing all of the asymmetrical stuff, side to side lunges. They got me the TENS unit because my back hurt so bad. It was like all in my back. And I feel like back labor is 10 times worse because it's not just normal contractions, like it's everywhere. And the back just, it's so hard. So I am having Matthew do counter pressure, which helped a lot. But then it got to a point where it was making things worse because it felt like the baby was coming out every time he was pushing. So it was like relieving my back, but then it was adding so much pressure down that like, it was just unbearable. And so I'm like, okay, the TENS unit is not working. The nurses are so amazing. They're like reminding me to relax my jaw. Matt's like, just breathe, stay hydrated. And I'm like, I can't fucking relax. I'm usually pretty like nice in labor and like calm, but I'm like, nothing's working. Like nothing is working. So everything just went so fast. Like I said, I'm doing all the stuff, all the labor stuff. And then finally, the only position that felt comfortable was all fours. So I'm on all fours, but I am screaming like a wild animal at this point. Screaming, okay? And I'm pretty sure they checked me and I was like in between like a 6 and 7 centimeters. And I kept laboring for at least like 30 more minutes, but I feel myself when I'm dilating because I get the shakes. I feel like I get the shakes once I dilate. And a lot of times every labor I've had, I've gone through a spike where I dilate really fast in a short period of time. So with Grayson, I went from like a 6 to a 10 in like 30 minutes at one point. With Leo, same thing. I went from like a 6 to a 10 in like 30 minutes. And so I think the same thing was happening. And I was at a point where I was like, everything was just so fast and like so intense that I was hysterically crying at how intense it felt. And at that point, Matt was like, do you want me to like push you to go natural? And I'm like, fuck no, give me the epidural. So I'm like waiting for the epidural, but I'm screaming. Like it's 4:00 in the morning at this point, and I am 90% sure I was like between an 8 and a 10. Like I'm 98% sure like I was transitioning to a 10 at this point, and they still let me get the epidural. And so I got the epidural, which I made that decision because I'm like, I feel like if I didn't get it, I would have had him within the next 30 minutes. But we were so tired because we had been up all day, all night. I felt so bad for Matthew because he was working. Like he is my rock in labor. He is seriously like the best support person, and I could not do it without him. Like he keeps me hydrated. He kept my chapstick on. He kept reminding me to relax. He was like, you know what I mean? Like massaging me and doing the counter pressure. He did everything perfectly. But I also felt bad that he had gotten no rest too. And so I'm like, you know what? F it, give me the epidural. I went this far. Like that's always my goal, is to go as far as possible so that it doesn't stall out too early. So I got the epidural and we took a nap. And I felt so good. I still felt all the contractions, but we took a nap and I slept probably for 30 minutes. I think it was like, at that point, I think by the time I got it, it was like 4:30. Must have been like 4:30 or 5. I'm not 100% sure. I got the epidural, we took a nap, Matthew fell asleep, and then like I wanted to continue moving with the epidural. So they had me have the peanut ball, and I wanted to like be asymmetrical to move like my knee over the peanut ball and moving back and forth. So that's what I was doing. Like I took a nap and then like I did that pretty much the whole time. And they were like, do you feel like you have to push? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel a lot of pressure down there. But I was pretty numb, which was great. And then, but I'm like, I probably could push. Like that's how it's always gone every time I've had an epidural. And they're like, well, let's check you. And it wasn't even that long afterwards. It was probably like 40 minutes after I got the epidural, seriously. And they're like, yeah, you're a 10. So I'm like, oh my God, I definitely got the epidural like between probably like 8 to 10 centimeters. But it was fine because we got a 25-minute nap in, or I got a 25-minute nap in, and then we started pushing, and I pushed him out literally in like 2 breaths, or under 2 minutes. It was definitely under 2 minutes. And the midwife was like, that was the best open glottis pushing I've ever seen in my life. I also asked them to, like, I wanted that internal rotation, so knees in, ankles out, and they delivered. They all picked my knees up, and they made sure that I had that internal rotation. I did push my back, but I propped my back up to make room for my sacrum. So your sacrum also opens when your baby is trying to enter the bottom of the pelvis and the pelvic outlet. And so I did that internal rotation and opened up that sacrum, or made room for the sacrum. And then I did my open glottis pushing, did that deep core connection breath, kept my pelvic floor open. And then she also was letting me know when the baby was crowning, so I could do that panting breath. And basically it was just the easiest push, and it was just, you know when your baby is born, it is so euphoric. Like I can't even explain it. It is the most amazing feeling ever. I'm hysterical like every time I'm in labor too. I'm just like so in love with Matt, and like we're just crying and everything like that. So anyway, he was born. We had that whole hour, that whole golden hour. Then they weighed him and he was 9 pounds and 6 ounces, and we were shocked. And he was a little bit swollen. Like, he looked different. I'm like, oh my God, he doesn't look like Leo or Grayson, but it was because he was swollen. I think because he came out so fast. So the whole labor from 11:30 p.m. when I went into like those full-blown contractions up until I gave birth was about 7 hours. So it was definitely my fastest labor. My other labors were both 12 hours on the dot. Epidurals earlier the last time. So I was so proud of myself with how far I went, and everything just went great. Even though it did not go the way I wanted to. I did not want the middle of the night labor. I did not want back labor. I wanted to labor at home as long as possible. None of that went my way, but it was fine because it all worked out, and he was born, he was healthy. And then, yeah, he's the chillest baby in the world. Like, I pretty much got him, like, my recovery was great. I did have like an infection at like 8 weeks, which was crazy, of my uterus. So that's something that can happen, which never happened to me before. But other than that, my postpartum recovery was great. We got into like such an easy routine pretty much from day 2. And he's like the best baby ever, the easiest baby. And now I'm pregnant with number 4. If you guys don't know that, I am pregnant with my 4th baby, and it's our first girl. So I'll be back with birth story number 4. Maybe I'll record it if it's possible, but I have a feeling this one's going to be even quicker. And hopefully it just goes my way this time, you know? Let's say no back labor, no middle of the night. I would love if like when Leo was born, I went into labor at 3 a.m. and he was born at 3 p.m. That would be great. Or if I could, you know, start at 6 a.m., born by that afternoon, perfect. But you know what? Birth never happens the way you expect it to, but it was great. The comb did not work for me, by the way. That shit did not work. Not with that back labor. Even the TENS unit, shit didn't work for me. But we got through it, and I was so proud of myself. And shout out to my husband, because like I said, could not do it without him. But that is my birth story with baby number 3. Like I said, his name's Denam, D-E-N-A-M. He is the most sweetest, calmest, happiest baby ever. So it'll be a great, he's like the most perfect baby to have a 17-month age gap with baby number 4. So here we are. If you guys enjoyed that birth story, I'm sorry it took me so long. Like I said, things just got crazy, and that was me remembering it from a year ago. I think I do have some notes, but that was just all from my brain. So if I missed anything, I'll let you know. But hope you guys enjoyed, and that's all.